It worked out for me very early on. I was able to sell part of my company and cash out quite a bit of money. And, I think that's when you realize like, okay, well, money is just like one element of success. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, always had that aspiration. And I imagined it to be more about freedom and money. I didn't really realize all the hard work that was behind it. We did, I think, 1 million in year one, then four, then 10, then 30, then I think 60, then 150. And then it just kept going.
Wow.
I see people like, they work super hard, they make all this money to like live the life they want. And then the next thing they get bored and they jump back into the life like that they don't love
Yeah.
because they just like it's like the expected thing to do. And I was like, the beauty of like me being able to make a decision where you want to go, when you want to go, and like not having to worry about anything else is fucking amazing, right?
All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thanks so much for tuning in once again. Today, we are incredibly excited because we're joined by Jan Bednar, who is the founder of Shipmunk, which is, for those who don't know about it, it's a leading tech-enabled fulfillment and logistics company.
And Jan is also the EY Entrepreneur of the Year in 2022 while we were studying at Harvard Business School. That's how I met Jan. We had several opportunities to sit next to each other because we have the similar kind of name,
Jam and Jan.
That's
Yeah, there
it.
you go.
And I really enjoy having several conversations with him. Most stuff to do with supply chain, and he's the man. And also, he's living his life. I'm really envious of him. He's only 33 years old. So lovely to have you, Jan. And we want to talk a lot more about you and understand your journey.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Super happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
So, Jan, this whole conversation is based around success, right? And so we've really got to lay the foundations and start with a fundamental question, which is, what does success actually mean to you?
I was wondering if you're going to go philosophical on me right from the start. I think success it has like the definition of success for me has changed over the years. Originally, when I was growing up, like I always wanted to have a lot of money so that I could buy anything that I wanted to buy. I could, fly anywhere I wanted to fly, travel, enjoy life. And so I've kind of made that my life's mission early on was really to kind of grow business, make a lot of money, and then like I live and do whatever the hell I want to do, right? And that's been that's and thankfully, because of a lot of different consequences and luck, a lot of hard work, it worked out for me very early on. I was able to sell part of my company and cash out quite a bit of money. And I think that's when you realize like, okay, well, money is just like one element of success, and it's a very key ingredient because it makes life obviously a lot easier. You can, you don't have to kind of worry about a lot of the other things that most people worry about. But like, there's this whole other element of success, which is, just continuous happiness and freedom. And I think that's really what it is for me is, and what I'm really working on right now, especially like after I've left the CEO job and, been focusing a lot on my investments and just life in general. I've been kind of trying to really like rediscover like what is this Gen 2.0, and how do I find success in life after I've had it so early, and really make sure that I can, I can be happy because I know a lot of people that have sold their businesses and they, have fun for a couple of years and they get depressed because they can't figure out what the next thing is, or maybe it doesn't work out, whatever the next thing is, or maybe they can find it something, right? And so, and I don't think I have the answer to what that is, but like I've been on this journey to try to find things that, like so far it's been only 6 months since I've been like out of the company. Well, I'm still in the company, but like on the day to day. And so I've been loving every moment of it, right? Like I can finally do all these things that I wanted to do. I play paddle, I travel, I kite surf and do all these things, right? I go to school, I read, I watch movies, like whatever it is. Like I just like, you go from not having any time to suddenly having a lot of time. And it's been amazing for me. Like, is that going to last for the next 10 years? I have no idea. I want to have kids soon too. So that's kind of another chapter in its own, right? That gives purpose to a lot of people. But I'm just letting it flow and seeing what happens, and hopefully, I'm going to kind of continue to be happy and enjoy life as I have over the last, really my whole life, actually, to be honest. Like I've always generally a very positive person. So I just always love to see kind of more of a glass half full type of life, right? And I think that alone has helped me kind of just be a pretty happy person. So I think being happy is a pretty big part of success.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to jump on quickly and say a massive thank you for all of the support so far. But I also wanted to ask a favor of you guys. We want this podcast to reach as many people as possible so that we can share all of the incredible learnings that we've had so far. But in order for us to do that, we need to grow our following to beat the algorithms. But the good news is, however, there is one simple thing that you can do to help us reach that goal. So I ask you if you could please follow or subscribe to us on whatever channel you're listening to this on. It'll help us grow the channel, which means we can get on bigger and better guests for you guys. And with that, back to the episode.
So Jan, we're really excited to really unpack your story. I was telling Dylan about your story. You started very, very early age. Can you take us through your journey and from the very young age that you're coming to US from Czech Republic, that story that we would love to share.
Yeah, of course, happy to. So always, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Always had that aspiration, and I imagined it to be more about freedom and money. I didn't really realize all the hard work that was behind it. I kind of, as a kid, like you have this fairy tale view of what your dad actually does. Like he just kind of leaves early and comes late, and like you don't really actually know like all the work and stress and everything that goes into it. So I had this naive idea about entrepreneurship, and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I played ice hockey my whole life. And then when I was 17, I went to the US to study English for 2 weeks. And then after, like I basically wanted to stay because I was like, I need to find a way to stay in the US and study and really like pursue my passion of entrepreneurship. And Czech just felt very small for me. And so I wanted to find a way to stay. I ended up getting a scholarship for ice hockey in Florida, which I was probably the only person ever to do that. Um, and it wasn't because I was so good. It was just because people in Florida are just not very good at ice hockey, right? Probably similar to Australia, I imagine.
For
And
sure.
so it's kind of a lot of just luck. And I ended up, move into Florida. I finished my high school for 2 years. I lived alone, which was pretty fun. At 17, I had to kind of take care of my laundry and cook and do all the kind of fun stuff that like you would have as a 17-year-old, living alone, and obviously just throwing some parties in high school, and so I became pretty popular because like I was the kid that lives by himself, and that was really fun. But I started my first business kind of around that time where back 10, 15 years ago, like a lot of the products in the US weren't available in other countries, especially in Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and so I started kind of this arbitrage business where I would help people buy products in the US and um, sell them to or ship them to Czech. And so that was really kind of my first like foothold in logistics basically, right? And so I started to buy products, sell them over there, ship them, and I started to build that as a service. It was kind of nice beer money in college. Grew Ended up growing to a couple $1 million in revenue, and then ended up selling it in 2017. But getting ahead of myself a little bit, in 2014, when I graduated, I won a business plan competition with this business, and I got into an accelerator program at my university, which gave me a bunch of cash. So I got like, after I graduated, it was kind of a great graduation gift. I got like $70,000 in cash from the university to go start this business, right? And even though the business already been running, like this was kind of to launch it internationally and make it a little bit more structured and take it kind of really grow it and focus on it for the first time. I also got free warehouse space for a year, which was amazing, right? Because like I'm sure you remember, Jam, like when you're signing your first lease and committing to that kind of money per month, it's super scary. And so so I was doing that, and I focused on the business, and then something interesting happened. Somebody called me and they said, "Hey, we read about you in the newspaper. Like, can you guys do fulfillment for us?" And we're like, "I don't know what's fulfillment." Let's meet up, right? Like you're a hungry entrepreneur, you're always trying to figure out ways to make money, and the business was doing okay, but like there's always opportunities to grow faster. So I met with this guy. They were basically an e-commerce company that was selling smart home products, funded by a venture capital company, and they were like actually doing some really cool stuff. And I'm like, why are you coming to me? Like, I'm sure there's companies that do this all the time. And they're like, well, actually, first, A, we want to support local entrepreneurs, but B, there's really nobody that does this well for startups. Like, there's big companies, but like we're a startup, like nobody really does it. And so I started looking more into it. I did a lot of research, and this is 2014. So e-commerce was already obviously growing quite a bit, but the service providers that were servicing 3PLs at the time were just not set up to service small clients, or even just pure D2C. Like there were traditional 3PLs, these old school legacy players, and I started to see opportunity. And obviously, you can't start a business and start serving enterprise. Like it's just like nobody's going to work with you. And so it was great because like there was no opportunity in the SMB. I mean, there was a ton of opportunity, but nobody's servicing it. And so, kind of naively, hired my first developer, who ended up being my co-founder. Started building the platform for the warehouse management system, for the customer management, order management, and just started figuring it out. Like went through CES in Vegas, and it's a electronics trade show,
Yep.
right? Started to talk to everybody that was selling there, and was like basically like, hey, we have this fulfillment solution. I think I created some one-page website, and I think I ended up leaving the show with like 5 customers. And
Nice.
Wow.
they obviously haven't never seen my warehouse. It was like 1,000 square foot kind of little place, like not very representative. But these guys were a lot of international companies, and they wanted a provider, and so it just ended up working out. And the first, 2 years were pretty rough. Like even though we had a lot of volume, a lot of business that we were acquiring, we just didn't know what we were doing, right? Like we had no background in logistics, we had no software, we had very little, just like business acumen. Like I graduated 6 months before this, right? And didn't have any money, or very little money to spend on anything. And so it was just like a lot of fun the first couple months, and then the customers just started growing, and we started getting more and bigger, and the business started growing rapidly. I think we ended up we did I think 1 million in year one, then 4, then 10, then 30, then I think 60, then 150, and then it just kept going,
Wow.
up and to the right. And obviously that kind of sounds super easy from like looking back, but it was a lot of work. And I kind of like to think like we're one of the first, tech-enabled 3PLs that were servicing these SMB mid-market brands, and kind of started the trend. And, nobody was talking about it. Nobody was excited about logistics, really until COVID. And when COVID hit, that's when,
Yeah.
obviously our volume went through the roof. And so our business tripled, and everybody else's, and people started to pour a ton of money into the space. And then and the rest is history. But very interesting experience, and just and then obviously back in 21, I sold part of the company. We ran a process with Goldman Sachs, and we're thinking about like bringing in private equity partners, or sell the business completely, and then end up deciding to work with Summit Partners. And so I sold them a little less than half the company, and it's been quite a ride. And then since then, I after like kind of 2 years, we bought one of our competitors, and then I realized for myself, like the company had 2,500 people. It was, we had 20 warehouses, and it was just a different business than it was in the beginning. And I think
Mhm.
my skill set is more around like 0 to 1. The 1 to 2 is not as exciting for me, and wasn't having as much fun. And so, I went to my partners and I said, look, I think I want to hire an external CEO. They were like totally supportive. Um, so went for a search, year and a half, looking for somebody to bring in, and eventually, basically ended up making one of my co-founders the CEO, which has been absolutely amazing. All right, because always like when you look externally, it's a challenge to find somebody that can kind of bring the values. And this guy has been with me from really the beginning, like I think year 1, month 10 or something. And so it's been incredible, and I trust him, and the team trusts him, and that's always very hard to try and manage that transition. But it's like knock on wood, worked out amazingly well.
Yeah. Well, that sounds
That's
like just,
amazing,
yeah,
inspiring.
such an incredible journey. I want to get a hot take from you though. Do you think bootstrapped or like raising venture funds, like
Easy.
venture capital?
Bootstrap all the
Bootstrap?
way. I mean, look, I think it depends on the business, right? Like there's some businesses that are just very hard to launch without capital. And I had a really interesting like experience because I didn't really want to bootstrap, but I didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
I was, a 21-year-old kid from Czech, um, trying to like raise money for a logistics company that like really did like wasn't that exciting on paper, right? It's like, everybody was telling me actually when I pivoted to this, to fulfillment, to Shipmonk, from the original business, right, which was the package forwarding, and they were like, you got, you crazy, like you're doing, that's actually innovative. That's like there's so many companies in the 3PL space, like so competitive, like very hard to innovate, very expensive. Why are you doing it? Like all my mentors were like, you're gonna be nuts. And for me, it was like, well, I know there's demand. There's not a lot of solutions, and the ones that are there are not great. And so I just figured like I would just solve the problem, right? But it wasn't exciting from a venture perspective because, this, it's not a 90% margin business, right? Like we're operating single digit margins, on EBITDA, if that's the case, right? And so it's just very hard to raise money, and especially in 2014, 15. And so even though I tried to raise money, I didn't like actively pursue it, but nobody basically wanted to invest. And so I had to bootstrap, and it was like one of those things where you make $1,000 a month, and like because our business is pretty recurring, like once you have a customer, right, like you kind of can rely on that revenue. Like then you use that to hire a person, and then like once you have money to hire the next one, you hire the next one. And so really, it was the first 70,000 that I got from this business plan competition that funded us, all the way to almost 400 million of revenue, right? And I think I mean, look, there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make that happen. Like
Absolutely.
you can't just buy anything you want to do. You can't hire everybody you want to do. You probably grow slower because you just can't hire all these people. But I also think it builds discipline. It builds, an understanding of what numbers are, and like how financials impact the business, right? And unit economics. Like you really worry about unit economics because, if you have $100 million in a bank and your cost per order is double than what it should be, like nobody really cares because you just have 100 million in a bank. Like you have a lot of runway. If you've got $40,000 in a bank account and like you've got double the cost per order, like everybody in the company, all they do is try to figure out a way to reduce that cost. And that's very hard to like teach to people that have come from those venture
A 100%.
backgrounds. And so for me, it's bootstrap all the way. I love bootstrap businesses. I think it teaches the right ethics and business acumen, and it's just like it's the right thing to do. But again, like there's definitely companies that like you just can't bootstrap, especially like where you're doing, some sort of a complicated, um, like SaaS build that you need to build a
Yeah.
lot of software, right? So
So Jan, like supply chain logistic, the very competitive business, but you found a real success in that industry. What was this kind of a secret ingredient behind it? Like, what's your competitive advantage or point of difference?
yeah, so it's not really one thing. Like early on, it was relatively easy to compete because there weren't really a lot of competitors, and they were like you had these small mom and pop shops that would do some sort of fulfillment, but like they just didn't have the tech capabilities. And so for the longest time, we're the only provider in the space that had their own tech that would basically allow people to use a 3PL partner. So like I would say we kind of created this, pioneered this like tech-enabled 3PL concept, because we built our own WMS, which was
Hmm.
built for having multiple customers in a building. The old WMSs didn't even support that.
Yeah.
We would build our order management system for customers to have a view into what's happening in the warehouse and be able to manage orders across the different channels. Right now, today that's more standard, but 10 years ago, nobody had this. And so that allowed us to really get to quite a bit of scale. And then once you have scale, then there's a lot of other benefits, right? You've got the footprint, you've got, more competitive transportation rates, you've got a better team, and the technology you can invest more and more, right? So we've, obviously been investing and continuing to improve it. And so I would say like our competitive pillars really like number one is just quality of service. Sounds cliche, but this better
Hmm.
than anybody. It's very
Yeah.
hard to actually execute well in fulfillment. And so focusing on the quality, the KPIs, the SLAs, super important. The technology piece, second most important, right? So being able to give customers the tech that not just gives them the visibility into the business, but also allows them to like have some extra value to their business, whether it's forecasting, whether it's taking some work off the plate of their customer service team. Um, and and really just the people that we bring in and the level of service that they bring to customers. So like the personalized attention, this is very hard to scale, right? Because we as we've gotten bigger, like I think we've lost it for a little bit and we found it, decided to invest in it. And so that's just super, super difficult to maintain as you grow. But we've made it our DNA and we really want to make sure that like our customers, even though we are larger 3PL, we've got this personalized approach and people can still feel like they're part of they have somebody to talk to instead of just having a very kind of like big company feel.
And I want to go back kind of to your introduction to business. Were there any kind of values or traits that you think you got from your parents, from your upbringing?
Yeah, I would say um, like it sounds basic, right? But like just treating people well, whether it's your customers, your vendors, your employees, that's I think the number one priority. And I think even in this business, right? Like your customers are everything and you need to understand them, you need to talk to them, you need to like care for them. Same with vendors. A lot of people tend to forget that, right? So I would say like treating people right has always been a great value. I think just the discipline, right? Like I grew up seeing my dad going to work and working hard and obviously us having a pretty good life. So I would say that's another kind of element. And then, an interesting one, which I didn't really value until now, has always been this balance of kind of work life, right? And I didn't really have a lot of balance when I was building Shipmunk. But I saw my dad had a very or has a very different business. Like it's more of a lifestyle business, and it's actually in transportation,
Mm-hmm.
logistics. But he's had it for 40 years almost, right? And as I was getting older and started understanding more of the business, he wasn't working as much. He was spending time doing things that he loves, and I think I judged him for it early on because I'm like, why do you not care about 3xing your company? It's so easy. Like you just work harder and this is what happens. And he was like, why? Like I've got everything I want. We have a great life. Like I want to play golf and I want to do all these things and I want to travel. And then now it's like finally, like I think it's kind of dawned on me. It's like that is a massive value, right? Especially when you have a family, you want to spend more time with them. And, look, I think if you want to build a successful business, balance goes out of the window. Like you have to grind as hard as possible, but there's a limit to it. And then valuing and really trying to figure out why am I doing this for, right? Like, am I doing this to get to a point where I actually have more time for my family and for hobbies? Because if that's the journey, then, I think there's a point where you need to be able to step away and say, I want to live the life that I set out to live, if you can and enjoy it, right? Where I see people like, they work super hard, they make all this money to like live the life they want, and then the next thing they get bored and they jump back into the life like that they don't love
Yeah.
because they just like it's like the expected thing to do. Like, what is the next thing you're gonna do, right?
Yeah. Speaking about expectations, did you, you said you had, quite a comfortable life growing up. Did you feel like a pressure to succeed?
Not at all. Internally, massive.
Yeah.
I think that was actually one of the things that was a massive driver for myself. Like I super competitive and um we had a good life, but like we weren't private, flying on private jets and staying in like
Mm-hmm.
the Four Seasons, right? Like we're for Czech, I grew up in the Czech Republic and like we had a very, very nice life. Um but not like completely nuts. And I made it kind of my because I hate when people think, or even at the time, it was like I hated when people would think like, oh, he's the son of this guy, he's got an easy life, and that's like what it's gonna be, right? So I made it kind of my mission. It's like I need to be completely independent and do this completely myself without any kind of external help. So nobody can tell me like, oh, you got this from your dad, right? And uh I think I don't know where that came from, but it was just like this need, like this reason to prove to the world that I can do this myself. And so that was a massive driver for me was you know and then I am a pretty, I would say, like in life today, like I'm pretty spoiled and I just won like a lot of the best things. And if you won that, like you just gotta get to a place where you can afford to buy a lot of those nice things. And so that's what kept me going. And it's a game, right? Like you just at some point, like you just want to be winning, and obviously money is an easy tool to measure that game. And so that became a game for me. And but again, like I think you just kind of go full circle, and then you realize like it's not really all about that, right? Like you just have to um, learn how to enjoy it. And freedom for me now is like the most valuable thing. Like I was talking to some of my friends in Australia, and like a week ago, right? Like my we're going to the Caribbean to go like kite surfing, and like a week ago I was supposed to go to Venezuela, and then before that Australia, and I was like, the beauty of like me being able to make a decision where you want to go, when you want to go, and like not having to worry about anything else is fucking amazing, right? And that's, I think for me, like what success has been is like just be able to do whatever the hell you want to do.
Is that the what you, everywhere that I've seen you calling living the best life? Is that how you describe your living the best lives?
For sure, living the best life, living the
Yeah,
life, and enjoying it, and like really understanding. I think it takes a little bit of like self-discovery and some like self-work to figure out like what is it that really drives you, right? Because the world portrays like the best life in a lot of different angles, right? Like it could be yachts, it could be jets, it could be supercars, it could be women, it could be parties, it could be like whatever the hell like the world kind of throws at us, right? Through social media, whatever. And the reality is like everybody's super different, right? And so I think discovering, because there's that natural inclination to just follow the
yeah.
crowd, and like if this is what everybody's doing, like this is what I'm going to do, right? Like you should move to, well, I live in Miami, which is kind of cliche, right? But like you move to Miami or New York, and like you live this crazy life. But I think for me, it's been really going back to my roots and understanding like what makes me happy. And
Yeah.
I love being with people and meeting new people, and going to parties, right? And so that's kind of my Miami life. But I also love being in nature and skiing and
Adventure.
biking and adventure. And so we're building a place in Canada to be able to spend more time in the mountains, right? Because that's really, and like there's nobody else there. Like that's just like us. We're like kind of building like a house in the middle of nowhere. Also, like as you know, I love exploring, and so just I bought this like expedition caravan, and we're traveling the world in it, and like sleeping outdoors all the time, and really being with nature. That's, to me, that's like the life that was meant to be lived. And yeah, it's great.
And how did you kind of come to that? Was that like a lot of just like sitting with your own thoughts or journaling? Like
Yeah,
how do you find that?
I'm not very good at journaling. I've tried it a couple times, but I do spend quite a bit of time about, like I'm like and this is why I've been successful in supply chain, because supply chain and operations in general or logistics is a lot about like incremental improvements, and like you make a lot of little changes to get it to perfection. And I look at my life very similar, like I've looked at my warehouse, right? Like you want to do that like point one incremental improvements every single day or every single month or whatever that path is. And so like if I catch myself doing something that I hate or just regret or whatever, I just make like a mental note, and I'm like what do I need to do to set my life so that I don't have to do that again, right? Or like if I go somewhere and I don't like it, like why do I not like it, and how do I make sure that I don't go to a place where I don't like that, right? And so there's a little bit of that. Obviously, like growing up, my parents took me to like we would go on trips with an RV where we would travel, and so I built that relationship with that type of activity early on. But I'm naturally super curious, and so I kind of want to try everything and then realize what I like and what I don't like, and I think I'm like mature enough to like then not do the things that I don't like, right? And it's funny how that changes too as you get older, right? Like
Mhm.
3 years ago, after my exit, like I would want to be at every single party, like I would want to meet, hundreds of people and like do all that stuff, and that's super fun. But like now it's like I'm as we try to start a family, like I just value completely different life. Like I want to be alone more, and I joke with my dad, right? Because like he's very introverted, like he doesn't really like a lot of people, and he just has his dogs and my mom, and they spend a lot of time with the four of them. And I'm like I would go crazy if this was my life, right? But older I'm getting, the more interesting that becomes, where you just look at the world differently and value things in a different light.
Interesting. You keep telling when you get older. I mean, you're only 33 years old, right? And
Yeah, well,
yeah, and then there's a long way to go, Jan, right? Like for you. And what's your current involvement in your business and at the moment?
yeah. So I'm still like in the executive level in the company. So I kind of help the team really with anything they need. I don't have a particular function, but I'm on the board, obviously. So really mostly strategy. We just spent a 3-day like offsite strategy planning session, and just support the people in the business as much as they need me or as little as they need me, and um, plays out amazingly for both of us.
Mm.
And I want to go back to kind of a point you just said before about how through social media and stuff, where success is portrayed as, the money, the cars, the jets. Do you think social media is a net positive or net negative?
Uh, it's a great question. I would say um, for if you can control it, I would say generally for most general public, it's probably a net negative, just because of that like level of comparison that exists in humans, right? Like naturally, we tend to compare ourselves to others.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I was growing up, like the only comparison that you have is the people that live in your town, right? And then maybe like the people that you read about in newspapers, but or watch TV. But like that is such a remote comparison. Like you don't even think it's real, right? It's kind of like if we're watching aliens, like you're not trying to compare how aliens live because it just like seems so distant. Where social media obviously has created massive issues where everybody, people just like us, right, now make us feel like they live this amazing life and they're beautiful and perfect bodies and travel everywhere, and it just and we compare ourselves to them because they're just like us, like they're just another person in the same town like a couple miles away. And I think that's just destroying and creating unrealistic expectations, and it's destroying like how people want to live. And like it happens to me all the time, right? Like I just, I like I don't know, like I'm skiing in Austria and I see somebody surfing in Bali and I'm like, oh, I wish I was surfing. And I'm like, I slap myself and I'm like, what an idiot. Like you fucking skiing, I'm sorry, you're skiing in Austria. Like be grateful for what you have. And so I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is like just that comparison element. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits of like, especially for someone like me who travels all the time, seeing my friends and what they do and feeling connected to them, and just understanding like where they are in their lives has been incredible. Um, yeah.
And you mentioned like now you're kind of focusing a bit on investments as well. Can you tell us what you're kind of doing in that space?
Yeah, so when I exited, I started my family office and knew nothing about investing, and wanted to make sure that I'm very careful about what I do because didn't want to be one of those guys that loses the money in the first year. So spent a lot of time learning and understanding the world, talking to a lot of founders that have exited and wealth managers, and really mapped out the whole space. Kind of how I approach a lot of new things that I do. And ultimately, because I was still running Shipmunk at the time, like I found a multi-family office in New York who was basically managing most of my investments. And so everything that we were doing was passive. My problem was I exited at the top of the market where everything was extremely expensive. And obviously, when you're on the top, the only way to go is the bottom. And so my first year of investing, the stock market went down like 30% or whatever, and then like some
Wow.
of the tech stocks were down 60, 70%. I fortunately wasn't heavily allocated in public equities, but when you see you know your even
Mm-hmm.
the little that I've invested like go down by 40% because I was pretty heavy
Mm-hmm.
in tech stocks, like it messes with you had quite a bit, right? Because like you, and then obviously it came back the next year, and now it's been growing like crazy, and so you learn, but it's a different element of how you run.
Mm-hmm.
In your business, the feedback loop is super fast. Like you make a decision, you know exactly if it worked or didn't, and like you can adapt. In investment, a lot of especially like private investing, you make a decision, you don't know if it worked for the next 5 to 10 years. And so what I realized, and this is again what I just kind of analyzed myself, I don't love investing. I don't love listening to pitches and making some bets and hoping I kind of reap the benefits in the future. So I invest in startups through funds and through different vehicles, but I don't actually spend any time like doing the investing directly. And so it's almost like like a responsibility that I have to manage some of these investments, but a lot of them are passive, very liquid, and you know, I'm still like scratching the surface in terms of just learning. And then we're doing some projects that are more exciting to me, like in real estate. We're developing some projects and apartment buildings or hotels or whatever. And so those are a little bit more fun. I can again be as involved as I want or as little. And yeah, that's been a little bit more kind of exciting on the investing side.
So what's next for Jan? Like apart from investment, are you planning to start something? I'm pretty sure as I said, I keep saying that I'm your age, 33, and long way to go.
It's funny,
What's
right? Because it's everybody asks me that question. And when you think about it, it's like all my life I worked to get to this place where I am. So like now to kind of jump back into something else to only just get busy, I don't think makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, like there's fulfillment in work. And that's very pun intended in our world, right? But like I think I get a lot of fulfillment from work. But a lot of kind of the self-discovery that I've been doing, and I wouldn't call it therapy, but I would say talking to a lot of coaches and just people that I think specialize in just finding purpose and happiness. And I think there's a lot of other areas of life that you can focus on, in life that will make you happy. And like the question that I'm asking myself is, do I want to go back to the grind and like not have time for anything? And then why did I do all this stuff that I build, right? And so I think the way that I'm thinking about my life in the future is, I want to be obviously spending a lot of time with family. I want to manage my portfolio and my investments. I want to spend a lot of time having fun, traveling, doing sports, whatever that is. And then if there's an opportunity for a new business, I don't think I would ever go run it the way that I have like my first business, right? Because that just like this, like there's no you can't half-ass starting a business, right? And so, there's ways that I can be involved that feels like a lot more active than just being an investor. But I don't know if I would ever want to go back to running a day to day unless I find something that I'm like absolutely excited about and completely changes my perspective on it. And it totally could, right? Like 2 years from now, like I could be doing the next thing and it could be super exciting. But like as of right now, I'm kind of taking it slow and just want to make sure that I don't put myself in a position where like I have to I have
yeah,
to be on a call at 9 in the morning, right? Like right now I just can manage my time as much as I want. So it's kind of nice.
yeah, absolutely. And I've seen a few posts that you put on LinkedIn about the Moonshot Award. And what's your involvement and tell us a little bit about Moonshot.
Yeah, Moonshot it's a platform for young entrepreneurs that solve local social issues, and for young entrepreneurs. So really, the kind of the cutoff is 30, and Moonshot is a very similar to the platform that I've basically the business plan competition that I won in my
Uh-huh.
university. Moonshot is a very similar kind of program, but it's focused on kids from developing countries with pretty serious social issues. And so instead of, as I was looking at my nonprofit work and kind of my giving back and foundation work, like, I didn't want to just send money to an organization and hope that what they do help solves the problem. We believe that you enable the people locally that understand the dynamics and the environment to solve those problems locally. And so Moonshot basically enables entrepreneurs to solve those problems. And so we do it through competition, also a business plan competition and awards. So we award, I think over $200,000 in prizes to these kids. And obviously that money goes a really long way in um, you know, these developing countries. And then there's a camp component to it. So we
Uh-huh.
kind of select some of these kids and fly them over to one place once a year, mentor them, try to really develop the business idea, and really help them kind of get it to reality. And it's been extremely um, rewarding, I would say, to see these young, super smart kids that grew up in, a lot of the times very like poor conditions or just in like live in places that we can't even imagine, and then giving them the opportunity or kind of the brain power to really help them build their idea. And so that's been really fun for me. And my good friend runs it. He's a
All
really,
right.
really generous, amazing guy. And yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Awesome. Awesome.
there's a little exercise. You spoke about like happiness being a big thing in like the holistic definition of success. There's a little exercise that I've done before as well, and I'd like to get your take on it. Like just thinking about what your perfect day is. Can you like explain to us if you had it your way, now that you're kind of in this transitory period and focusing more on that happiness aspect, what is your perfect day?
Yeah, you know what's interesting about a perfect day is like I think the perfect day tends to be a selection of like your favorite activities to
Yeah.
do. But if you are to have like I love a routine, like I love traveling and I love like having freedom, but I also like routine, right? Like if I'm working out, I want to work out at the same time during the same days because like I can't like I have a hard time focusing working out like as I travel. And so I would say like if I'm to choose like the perfect day where like I just throw all my activities in it, I'll wake up somewhere in the mountains, I'll go heli ski, then I take the helicopter to the beach, I go kite surf, I hang out with my friends, have my favorite DJ play, have dinner at an amazing restaurant, and then party through the morning, right? Like that's like the optimal day. But like I could
Yeah.
would not want to live that day every single day. And so like my like right now, my perfect routine that I actually have right now, as I'm here in Miami is I wake up at 7 in the morning, I go play paddle with my friends, right? So you kind of meet with the friends, then I go work out. So I work out more than I have ever worked out, and I feel amazing, and that's a great kind of super rewarding thing. Then I'll typically work from like 12 to 4 or 5. Um, and then we typically have an activity with the wife, right? We take the dog out or we go to have dinner or whatever. And so and that's like an amazing day. I love video games, so play a lot of video games. And like, I just kind of, but I like to change it up a little bit. Um, and that for me, I think is the definition of like the perfect day is, a little bit of like the fun activities, but also your routine.
Yeah. Jan, so your journey is amazing. Like you achieved such amazing things in such a young age. And if I have to ask you one key ingredient for your success, can you name one? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's ever like one thing, but if I was to say one thing that is super important for entrepreneurs is curiosity. Always questioning why things are the way they are and pushing the limits on what, you think, like questioning why things are and then really finding ways to improve them, because that's really what all entrepreneurship is about. So I think there's certain traits that, you can focus on as an entrepreneur, but I think it's so much about luck and the people you meet and like being in the right place in the right time. Um, And so like I think I would bullshit if I would to say like, okay, like be curious, you're gonna be successful. Like I think it just,
no.
it takes a lot of those little ingredients and that end up, you know, giving you a chance at success. But as we know, that the success opportunity is still super small. And so I just feel incredibly lucky that I've been born when I was born and have the opportunity that I had and met the right people. Like my two co-founders that I met in the business like incredibly lucky to like I've never in my entire life, and I mean a lot of people, I've never met anybody that level of quality, and I just completely randomly was kind of met them and made like and end up working together, right? And so those are things that you can plan, but again, like foundationally I think for the business itself, like focusing on the customer, being curious, holding people accountable, hiring the best of the best, um, grinding, and really driving the business yourself as the owner. I think are kind of the key like business ingredients. Those are you
Mhm,
know.
mhm.
You mentioned they're grinding. How do you grind, but then also maintain relationships as well? Because you also spoke about your wife. How did you?
I'm an extremely generous and tolerant wife, I would say. Um, and I told her, look, we started dating 4 years before I started Shipmunk, and she
All
was
right.
well, she worked, she joined the company early on, and then she went back to school, and so she saw what we're doing and kind of knew that like this is hopefully for the greater good of our relationship and our lives. And was not ever questioning like why I'm at work at 11 p.m. or 3 in the morning or like I think having that support system at home um, is extremely important to help you not worry about it. Because like if you're worrying about business and then you come home and you worry about your relationship or feel guilty that you're not spending enough time, obviously that's different when you have kids, right? But like I think that helped me tremendously. And I didn't have guilt, and it just ended up working out great together. And it might have not, right? And at some point, I'm sure she would obviously want to spend more time together, and so it just I think having the foundation at home and setting the expectations is extremely important. I could not like I mean I joke about it with my wife, but like I could never build Shipmunk if I was single. Like I think I would just go crazy, because like you don't have the focus. Um, so having that strong foundation at home is extremely important.
And you mentioned kids there. Is there anything that you would pass on to them? Like, is there one or like, I suppose, what are you trying to instill in them once they come around?
Yeah, I would love to teach them the same thing my dad taught me, which is,
Mm.
just inspire them to do great things and like want to just like live life to the best of their ability and find ways to be happy. And if that means playing sports or being a singer or being an entrepreneur, like whatever that is, like I'll support them. Um, and I just would want like would love for them to see me as an inspiration, so that they can have that as like, because I think everything we do, or a lot of what we do, is looking up to our parents and how they live and how they kind of, show for us. And I would just love to be that figure for my kids as well.
Mhm. So, Jan, what's the plan for Shipmonk going forward? Like, are you still gonna get involved in the business? And I remember talking to you a while back about global expansion, etc.
Yeah. So we're yeah, I mean we're grinding away. I mean obviously my co-founder just became CEO pretty recently, so he's got a lot on his plate. Obviously the goal is to continue growing the business, and we've got private equity partners on board, so at some point they're going to be looking for an exit. But the markets are not ready for like we're not ready. Well, the market's just not really the best for exit yet. So we've got some work to do, and we think in the next few years we'll obviously be looking for potential exit, but we still have a lot of work before that's possible. But yeah, it's been obviously relatively challenging, and I would say fulfillment and e-commerce in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just hopeful that the market's going to turn around a little bit, and because it feels like we've been swimming against the current, right? Like we've had this
Yep.
massive growth of e-com during COVID, and then
Yep.
it's been like a little bit slow the last 3 years. So we're hopeful that it's going to turn around because everything comes in waves, and we'll be able to capitalize on it.
Yep. Yep.
And like throughout the journey of building Shipmonk, did you have any mentors that kind of helped guide you along the way?
Absolutely, yeah. Like especially early on, I had amazing mentors from the university. They're by the way the same ones that were telling me to never start Shipmunk, but I don't hold it against them because it was, by any means, like if somebody came to me today and told me the same thing, like I would be like, yeah, no way, like don't do it. And most of these ideas, by the way, sound crazy when you start them, right? That's only when, like the probability of success was very low. And so, but they were amazing. They were entrepreneurs that were giving back and mentoring these companies. And I think that's also number one thing for any young entrepreneur to get a mentor, and somebody that can kind of like it, like it doesn't have to be from the same. It doesn't have to be like a super successful person or somebody that like has been in the industry. It's just having somebody to run ideas off of. Entrepreneurship is super lonely, so having that like buddy system to be able to work through it, I think, is extremely important. Um, yeah, those guys, like I still see them quite often, and I couldn't be more grateful.
Mhm. I guess, Jan, like we talked a lot about your journey and your experience through Chipmunk. Do you feel successful?
Um, I'm happy, and for me, success equals happiness. So yeah, I would say I'm successful because I'm happy.
That's excellent.
That's a great way. Yeah.
Would totally agree with you. Throughout our conversation, I've been jotting down a few things which I think are traits which have led to your successful life. So I'd like to share them with you. The first one is positivity. I mean, throughout this entire conversation, I don't think the smile's gone from your face. It's been a super energetic and upbeat conversation.
That helps in sales a lot, actually.
Oh, I absolutely believe that. And I think, even in the potentially that's helped drag you through the kind of darker times of building a business and, just through life in general. And it helps motivate and inspire other people as well. Like energy is kind
Yeah, for sure.
of shared in a room. And so if you're lifting up that energy, then other people will be brought up by that. And then the second one I've got is you've got the hustle. Like it sounds like from your story, things were very kind of scrappy to start, but you got in there, got things done, and were just always grinding and hustling away, chipping away at things, trying to, as you said, be incrementally better every day. And I think that is, it's very much the entrepreneurial kind of spirit of having that hustle, but it's clearly paid dividends for you. And then the last one that I've got is authenticity and kind of you're very true to yourself. And one thing that it's probably the thing that I respect most from this conversation is, even when Jam said, you're still so young, like what's next for you? The fact that you're so okay that, for me, I've kind of done what I set out to accomplish. And now I'm kind of happy to fulfill my own happiness at the end of the day. And you're not kind of being pressured by the standard society thing. Oh, you're still so young. Let's go and start another business and hustle hard again. You're
Yep.
very attuned to yourself, I think is maybe a good way to say it. You know what you're looking for, and you're kind of happy to chip away at that.
Yeah, and add to that kind of extension to positivity, what you're talking about, Dylan. What I see, Jan, throughout the conversation, every hard time he called it good times. So that's absolutely a nice way to put it this way. From early days as a 17-year-old, good times, right? But actually, there were
It's
the
true.
hard times, right? And
There were the hard
that's
times, but they build who you are, And so I'm not much of a
absolutely.
guy that looks back and regrets things. And I obviously didn't always do the right thing, but it makes you who you are, and as long as you're happy where you are, um, then it's good. And if you're not, then you should just change it. So I mean, it sounds easier than it is, but I would say that that mindset I think is super important in business too, because you go through so many ups and downs.
Mhm.
It's such a hard thing, right? And your job as a leader is to lead people and motivate them and inspire them, and like you need to have that like optimistic, overly optimistic view of the world. For me, one of the things that's actually helped me dramatically, one of my co-founders, my tech co-founder, is an extreme like I wouldn't say pessimist, but like he kind of keeps me in check, right? Like I'll go, let's just go do this right now, and like I get everybody hyped up. And he's the guy that's like, we should, think about these five things, right? Because, and I'm like, oh, you know what? You're right. The four don't matter, but the one, like, we should actually check because you want, and like, you need to understand where those gaps are for you, right? Because otherwise, you're just going to go and hit a brick wall. So, um, yeah, thank you, by the way. That's a great,
Yeah.
I really appreciate that summary. Those are nice
And
things.
also, one more thing, that your curiosity, right? Like, and again, like we were talked about luck, right? But luck didn't happen for no reason because you keep pushing, keep asking the questions. That's always the case with Jan. I remember even like having a conversation with Jan. He wants to know about me, and he was asking all these questions. About what you're doing and all that. You're always curious, and that curiosity, I guess, create that luck, for any of us. If you don't push, you don't get it, right? If you,
True, true.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
an interesting thing I've read recently where kids between the age of whatever 3 to 8 ask, I think on average 300 questions per day, and that number goes down to like 10, as an adult. And I always wonder, right? Like, there's so many things we don't know about the world, and like I find it very um, interesting to like learn everything there is to learn because the world is a fascinating place, and I think we should focus on being curious, and it's not something you can teach, but I think being aware of that curiosity and like really asking the questions, you'll start seeing the world in a very different place.
And I think that's a perfect note to leave it on. Jan, thank you so much. It's been an incredible conversation, and we were so glad to have you on today.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much for
Jan.
having me. Thanks, guys. Good seeing you.
And
Thank
on that
you.
note, if you enjoyed listening to today's conversation, please subscribe or follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this on right now. And if you want to see more inspiring content, you can go over and see all of our episodes over on our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.